What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hutch Coming in Clutch. I'm your host, Hutchison Brown, and today we've got a fantastic show. We are preparing for battle for week one. What an exciting time. Tonight, Thursday night, assuming you're listening to this on Thursday, the day it posts, we got the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, my Philadelphia Eagles playing Thursday Night Football, man. Yo, it is so back. We are so back. The 2025 NFL season's on. Fantasy football is here. We're done with the draft. We're done with the offseason. We're done with all the prediction. It is time to actually see how this season plays out. So excited. We got a jam-packed show today with a lot of different things. We'll get to them as we get to them. Let's just say that. You can follow me on Twitter at HutchisonB_FF. And make sure you subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening for all your fantasy football needs, or to get you in and out twice a week within 20-25 minutes, get you all jam-packed with all the fantasy football information that you need. Make sure you stick around for Hutch Coming in Clutch throughout the season. Let's win some fantasy leagues starting week one. We're going to start this show, and we're going to start it every week with some injury updates. Obviously, look, I'm recording this Wednesday evening, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there could be updates, but I'm here to give you the most updated information that I have right now, just so that you're ready for week one of like, okay, who's injured, who I need to look out for this week. Now, quarterback, there are no injuries, so that's great. Running back, we have Joe Mixon from the Texans on IR, Tyler Spears on IR. We've talked about that both in length throughout the offseason, but just, know they're on IR and they should not be in your starting lineups. And then Najee Harris, he had that eye injury and people joked about it a little bit because he was wearing an eye patch. He looked a little bit like a pirate. It was a fun offseason, Najee Harris, with the injury. Obviously not fun for him. Obviously an injury is no good, but, people were joking about it. It was interesting this offseason with him, but he's been dealing with that eye injury. He's practicing, though, in limited fashion, and is a strong possibility that he plays in week one. But even if he plays in week one, most reports show that his workload will be limited. Looks like Amarian Hampton is going to be the clear-cut starting running back in week one. That makes him a strong RB2 play in fantasy football for this week. Love to see that. Now, wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk, he's on the pup. He's not going to play in week one. He's probably not going to play for at least half the season, per most reports. And given what his timeline is on that ACL injury, and given the fact that he seems to have had setbacks, it's not good for Ayuk. I'm really not liking the vibes here. He's on my IR, and I'm not expecting much from him this season. If I have him on my fantasy team, which I actually don't have him on any rosters this year. Now let's talk about the Tampa Bay receiving room. Jalen McMillan and Chris Godwin, not yet cleared to play. They're both expected to be on IR, or they are on IR, both of them. And both of them are not expected to come back until like 5 to 8 weeks from now. Jalen Millen, like more like 10. Not great. I mean, obviously, we're going to see these guys miss a lot of weeks, a lot of time when they come back. Are they even going to be the same players? We don't know. So, rookie Mecca Ibuka, man, just switched his number to his former Ohio State number 2. Lots of aura there. Yo, it's looking good. Mecca Buka, the hype train is real. We should get on it. It is something that I think is going to be effective week one. So if you have him on your team, do not be afraid to put him in that flex week one, even though he's a rookie. The opportunity is going to be there. And now some other wide receivers with some injuries. Jalen Coker, Cokeheads Unite. He's placed on IR, unfortunately. He was looking really good, man. The offseason was looking really, really good for him. He looked like he was going to be the clear-cut number wide receiver 2 on the team, but not going to happen anymore, at least to start the season. We could see him get there midway through the season as he gets back from his injury, but for now, it's going to be either Xavier Legette or Jatavian Sanders, most likely, unless we see a resurgence from Hunter Renfrow, which I think is unlikely given the fact that they cut him before re-signing him after Coker went to IR. So look out for Sanders and Legette as potential sleepers, undrafted gems right now in fantasy football. We talked about Sanders in depth last week. If you missed that undrafted gems episode, go check it out. And then lastly, Darnell Mooney. Return to practice from a shoulder injury this week. That's great to see. When that first report came out about his shoulder injury, it was looking really scary for week one. It's great to see him back at practice so early from that shoulder injury. That means his recovery process has been going really well. And it means he's going to be very involved in this offense, man. When you look at this receiving core, it's Kyle Pitts and nobody else after Drake London. It's really, really thin at wide receiver and at tight end for this team, which means Darnell Mooney yet again has the clear-cut wide receiver 2 role right in front of him. He did it last year with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix at quarterback, and he finished as a top 30 wide receiver in fantasy points per game, nearly eclipsing 1,000 yards. If he had played 17 games, he would have eclipsed 1,000 yards. Really, really good to see him back from injury. Hopefully he's fantasy relevant this year. Hopefully we can play him as a weekly flex. And now let's go to tight end position. There's one player to talk about, and that's Isaiah Likely. He broke his foot a little while ago in this offseason. questionable for week one. I don't think he's going to play. I think it'd be really rushed for him to play week one, and this gives Mark Andrews a nice solid bump up as he is, alone in this tight end room now. But that's it for the injuries. I want to make sure it's brief, quick, just give you a nice injury update, maybe a couple takeaways from the injuries here and there. But overall, the point is just to make sure you know about these injuries. Make sure you know what's going on heading to week one so you don't miss anything in your lineups. Now, let's talk about the next segment of this show, the second of four, my coming in clutch or fudge players of the week. Now, we're going to talk about players that are going to come in clutch for your lineup this week. Mostly, we're talking about running back twos, wide receiver twos, flexes, or players in your bench, or fringe quarterback one / tight end one starters, or guys that are on waiver wires. We're talking about players that are unlikely to be started week in and week out for your team that I think are going to come in clutch for you this week. And then my fudge players of the week. I'm targeting some bigger names here. I'm going to go for some RB2s, some wide receiver twos, maybe even RB1s or wide receiver ones if I really feel convicted on it. Some players that I just don't feel good about this week. And when you look at them in your lineup after Sunday, you're going to be like, oh, fudge, why was this player in my lineup? He really screwed me over. So we're going to start at the quarterback position with my coming in clutch players. We're going to start with quarterback Daniel Jones of the Indianapolis Colts. He's going against the Miami Dolphins this week. I like this play for a multitude of reasons. One, let's start with Daniel Jones himself. He's proven to be fantasy relevant before. We saw a couple of years ago in 2023. He was a top 10 quarterback in points per game when he had over 600 plus rushing yards in a single season. He's got the rushing upside. He can provide stability in the passing game better than Anthony Richardson can. I think we're going to see fantasy relevance from Daniel Jones throughout the season. And I think it starts this week against a very susceptible defense in the Miami Dolphins. They've lost Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey over the last year, two key pieces in that secondary. And you have Michael Pittman, Josh Downs coming back this week, and as well as Tyler Warren, who's looked like a professional in preseason and in training camp. I think this is a good enough receiving core, a good enough quarterback with rushing upside, and a bad enough defense so that Daniel Jones, I know this is a bad name and a name that a lot of people make fun of, but I think Daniel Jones is going to make it into the QB1 conversation this week. So if you're desperate for a QB1 play, if you tank quarterback in your league, or if you need a QB2 spot and you're deciding between a couple players, play Daniel Jones. I think he's going to be really, really good this week, a strong QB2 or a desperate QB1 level play. Now, let's talk about Tyrone Tracy, running back of the New York Giants. He's playing against the Washington Commanders this week. I really like this play because Tyrone Tracy, it's his job to lose in New York right now, man. Throughout the preseason, throughout the training camp process, you've seen that Tyrone Tracy is getting the majority of the snaps with the ones. Now, throughout the season, we could see Cam Scatterby get more involved. He made some flashes in preseason, made a couple flashes in the training camp on the second team, and we know he's a potentially really talented back, and the fans seem to love him. He could get very involved early in the season, but week one, he's still a rookie. He's still getting very acclimated in the NFL. This is going to be Tyrone Tracy's backfield in week one. And against the Washington offense, we know the Giants are going to have to score some points and get in the passing game to win this game. And that might seem bad for Tracy, but then you remember, Tracy can catch the freaking football. There was a game last year where he saw double-digit targets. He had plenty of games with a multitude of receptions last year. He's very good as a pass blocker. He's overall a great receiving back. And when you look at this receiving core, you have Malik Neighbors, and then a very questionable receiving core outside of that. So Tyrone Tracy is going to be necessary in this receiving game for this Giants offense to move the football forward. I am expecting heavy volume as a receiver and a runner for Tracy this week. And against a Washington team where they're going to need to score some points, hopefully he can fall in the end zone. Now, wide receiver, this is one of my favorite plays this week. My coming in clutch play at wide receiver is Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions. Obviously, y'all know me. I love Jama this year. I have him ranked near Amon-Ra St. Brown in fantasy football, just outside my top 15 wide receivers. Love him for fantasy football this year. I think he starts off his year 4 breakout with a bang against the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers late in the offseason lost Jerry Alexander. That's a huge loss in the secondary and leaves the secondary with a lot of young, unproven talent. A veteran like Jameson Williams, who's been seriously developing his game, looking to take another step forward in year 4. The coaching staff has been all over him. I think he takes advantage of a younger secondary, burns them downfield for a couple of big plays, and has a humongous performance. Looking at this game, Green Bay, Detroit, 2 potent offenses and 2 defenses with a lot of question marks. Detroit's defense in the second half of last year was absolutely awful. Now, most of that was injuries, but a lot of these players are still recovering from injury coming into the season. We don't know how they're going to play in week 1 now that they're healthy. And then looking at Green Bay, they lost Kenny Clark in that Dallas trade, and then Micah Parsons, even if he plays in week 1, which is questionable right now, but even if he does play in week 1, he probably doesn't have the full playbook. He's probably not fully ready. He's probably going to be on a limited snap share. So Green Bay's defense isn't looking too hot either. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring game with at least 50 points scored, and that leads to a great day for the wide receiver position in Jameson Williams. Now, lastly, to stack with Daniel Jones, I'm going with Tyler Warren against the Miami Dolphins. Josh Allen's been hurt a lot of this offseason, and Tyler Warren's taken advantage in this receiving room. He's been the clear-cut, honestly, he's been the clear-cut number one target for this offense right now. In preseason and in training camp, he's gotten incredibly involved. He's looked like a professional, as I mentioned earlier. He's looked very, very good. And the reason I want to start a rookie tight end week one, that's scary, but it's just the opportunity's right there in front of him, and the reports we've seen out of training camp are just too good to ignore. Play him against a weak Miami defense this week. I think we see a week one banger for Tyler Warren and a great season after that. And now we're going into my fudge players of the week, one at each position like we did with the coming in clutch players. My quarterback this week for the fudge players is Dak Prescott. This Eagles secondary is absolutely loaded. You got a lot of great pieces here. And Dak, this team just lost Micah Parsons, made a terrible trade, and the coaching staff and the GM have been blindly defending it, knowing it's not good. Everyone in Dallas knows it wasn't a good trade, and their team is not as good as a result. It was a complete shell shock. This team is just in bad vibes right now. They're in bad vibe land, and I just don't think it's going to be a good week against the Philadelphia Eagles on a short one on Thursday Night Football. I am out on Dak this week. Now, let's talk about Tony Pollard against the Denver Broncos. Tajay Spears is hurt, and that means we're going to see a lot of volume for Tony Pollard. However, I just don't see the upside this week. He's got a matchup with the Denver Broncos that's just really, really tough. They're really elite against the run. They're looking elite against the pass. Pat Surtain, he's got to be covering Calvin Ridley all game long. And look, I like Calvin Ridley as a player, but this is Pat Surtain we're talking about. Calvin Ridley's likely not going to be very productive. And Cam Ward's a rookie making a week one debut. This offense is likely not going to move the ball very much. And as a result, I just don't see Tony Pollard at the running back position being very good for fantasy this week. The Titans are likely to fall behind pretty quickly. Only argument you can make for him is that he's a volume play, but it's going to be very gross. I'd rather not play him if I don't have to. And then DK Metcalf against the Jets. Look, Aaron Rodgers' potential revenge game is against the New York Jets. I just don't see it for this week for the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers won. The reports on him all offseason have been either negative or neutral. We have not seen much positive out of camp for Aaron Rodgers this offseason. And then when you look at this matchup, I just project this to be a very low-scoring game. The Jets offense, obviously with Justin Fields not being super competent as a passer, and you look at the Steelers and the Jets defenses, both very good defenses, two questionable offenses. That just projects for a low-scoring game. The over-under is 38.5. I kind of like the under. I'm not going to lie. I think this is going to be a gross, low-scoring bully of a game that we're not going to like for fantasy purposes. And one of the best players on this offense in the Steelers and DK Metcalf is someone that a lot of people are going to start in fantasy this week. I don't want him in my lineup. I just don't see a high-volume game from this week. Now, let's talk about the tight end fudge player, or my fudge tight end this week, and that's going to be Colson Loveland. Now, you might be like, Hutch, this is so hypocritical. You just talk about a rookie tight end as your coming in clutch player of the week. Why are you putting Why are you putting a rookie tight end in your fudge? There's a clear difference between these two offenses. Yes, I project the Bears offense to be better. However, it's severely more crowded. You have Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Luther Burden, and Cole Kmet and DeAndre Swift. While in Indianapolis, you have Michael Pittman and Josh Downs, who is not fully healthy. That's it. And that's just going to fade Colson Loveland out. When you have such a crowded receiving core, a rookie tight end, he would have to be an absolute crazy elite difference maker for him to make a true difference in the first week of the NFL season. I have a really hard time seeing him separating himself from all this talent in week one. So if you draft him as your tight end one, I think you could have a really nice season in the back half of the year as he continues to develop in the league. However, in week one and early on, until we see it, I don't want to put him in my lineup. So, especially against a great Minnesota defense on Monday Night Football, I'm just not feeling Colson Loveland this week. Now, that's it for the coming in clutch and the fudge players of the week. Now, let's head into listener Q&A. We're to rapid fire through some start-sit questions this week. Half PPR flex, Tony Pollard against the Denver Broncos. We just talked about him. Or George Pickens on Thursday Night Football. Now, this is a really tough one. I think that if I were you, I would go in the George Pickens direction. He's a player that can make a huge play downfield. He's a player that is very, very good in the red zone with his contested catch ability. I think that if we see any garbage time or any high passing volume, which we likely will since Dallas will be behind, we're going to see some George Pickens involvement. The hype for him has been insane this offseason. Now, Jared Goff or Trevor Lawrence. Jared Goff goes against Green Bay. Trevor Lawrence goes against the Carolina Panthers. This is really, really difficult, actually. I think I'm slightly going to lead with Jared Goff because of what I mentioned earlier with two good offenses, two questionable defenses that we're not 100% sure on because of injuries and because of players not being ready to play yet. I think Jared Goff is going to have a good one in this week. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta, all the weapons you need, and a questionable Green Bay secondary without Jerry Alexander. Let's fire up Jared Goff this week. Let's go. Now we're looking at a second QB question. So 2 QB league, second QB, Justin Fields versus the Steelers for team revenge game potential, or JJ McCarthy on Monday Night Football against the Bears. This is going to be a fun Monday Night Football matchup. And I think I'm going to go that direction with JJ McCarthy, man. You got Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen recently signed to the team, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, elite offensive line. You have all the pieces in this offense to make it successful for JJ McCarthy. And he just has more familiarity with his offense. He's been in this team last year with Kevin O'Connell at coach. And with Fields, you're learning an entirely new system. You're learning an entirely new offense. And against the Steelers this week, I don't project a high-scoring game. So I'm going to play JJ McCarthy by a hair. Because with Fields, you do get that rushing upside, not as much with McCarthy, but I think McCarthy just overall outplays Fields by a lot this week. Now, pick a running back in full PPR formats: Isaiah Pacheco, Jordan Mason, or Tyrone Tracy. I'm going with Isaiah Pacheco. I see the volume being there week one. We saw it last year in the first couple of games that Pacheco played healthy. He was on pace for an 1,100-yard rushing season, along with nearly 500 receiving yards. I know it's only 2 games. To extrapolate that over 17 games is really weird. But my point is that we saw what the Chiefs wanted from Pacheco early on in that season, and that was for him to be a lead back. He was getting 73% snap share. And given the backfield right now with Kareem Hunt as the only potential capable backup, this is Pacheco's backfield to lose, and he's fully healthy entering the season. The Chargers, obviously, this should be a fun game with 2 solid offenses. I think Pacheco's going to be well this week. I would start him. And now, that's it for the listener Q&A. We're going to jump into the over-unders with no other than Mr. Andy Behrens. See y'all soon. What's going on, everybody? We are back. I've changed my outfit because this is a different day I'm recording this Thursday morning. We've brought back a friend. Please welcome on Mr. Andy Behrens, member of the Fantasy Sports Writers Association, co-founder of the Deep Shot with Dalton Del Don, formerly of Yahoo Sports. Andy, you're here to defend your title. I mean, obviously, I did this last time I had this podcast over the season, and Andy Behrens in the over-unders was the only one to get all 3 of these right, and you'll understand what that means if you don't know what I mean in a second. But Andy, how you feeling being here ready to defend your title?
I'm feeling good. You know, it's a short list of fantasy analysts who would be willing to put a perfect record like mine at risk. But you know, if I'm known for anything, it's my courage. So I'm here again, putting it all on the line.
Yes, sir. All right. We're going to get right into it. The theme of this week is breakout candidates. So how the over-unders work is we're going to go through 3 players, and I look at their general fantasy football projections by the consensus, whether it's like 3.2 receptions, 35.5 yards, or something like that. And based on that projection, I make a prop bet. So over under 3.5 receptions, over under 35.5 yards. And basically what we're doing is I'm asking Andy to predict over or under for this week, and I'll make my picks as well to piggyback off of Andy. So the theme of this week, obviously, like I just said, breakout candidates. We're looking at 3 players that could have huge breakouts this year. Do they start off their seasons with a bang? The first one we're going to talk about, I'm not sure how you feel about this player, Andy. He's a very tough player to look for in fantasy football, and that's Keon Coleman, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills. Had a really struggle-filled rookie year. Not a lot of huge plays, but reports has shown that he's completely transformed into a completely different human being. The Buffalo receiving corps is still wide open. So Keon Coleman over or under in week 1 against Baltimore, 3.5 receptions. It's Sunday Night Football, and Baltimore secondary obviously last year was really susceptible to fantasy points allowed to the wide receivers. And remember, Jamar Chase went 200, I think it was like 250 against them. It was kind of insane. And then this year, though, they added Jerry Alexander, they extended Kyle Hamilton, and Nate Wiggins is stepping into year 2. Their first-round pick could be a huge asset for them. So Keon Coleman, over under 3.5 receptions.
I was initially terrified that you were going to give me a yardage total here. And Keon Coleman, of course, is the kind of player who could catch 1 ball, but it goes for 65 yards, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna I mean, this is a low number, and I'm going to take the under.
Mm,
I just think I think it's a loaded receiving core. He picked up a little bit of an injury during the week. That's a small concern, but also like he's going to have to be a lot better than he was last year. He wasn't much of a separator last year. He was fun. I like he's a really easy player to root for. I enjoy an interview with Keon Coleman as much as the next guy. But he's got some strides to make, and they got a bunch of other options, right? That's going to be presumably a tight game. They've got Shakir, they've got Kincaid, they've got plenty of pass catchers, they've got Palmer. I don't know. It's a pretty loaded receiving core. Not like it's a starless receiving core, but they've got a lot of talent there, I think. So I'm going to say he finishes with 3 catches for something like 55 yards.
I think that's totally fair. And don't forget Joshua Palmer as well. They added him from the Chargers this offseason, and he filled in great in Los Angeles when they needed him. I think he'll be a solid asset this year for them. But yeah, I'm going to take the under as well. I do believe that Keon Coleman could absolutely have a big breakout this year. You look at the camp reports, and like I said earlier, it's shown that he's completely transformed into a different human being. The coaching staff, the players, everybody has said this kid looks completely different. But I would want to bet on this when I see it on the field first. And against a tough matchup in Baltimore, where, like you said, all the receivers are healthy. We had that ankle injury with Khalil Shakir, but it looks like he's good and ready to go for week 1. So I'm going to take the under as well. And I think 3 for 55 is a fantastic projection for him. He'll probably have a deep catch or two, but it won't be high volume. So now let's go to Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, everybody's favorite sleeper in fantasy football this year. Everyone's calling him Bill Krosky Merritt. 9.5 carries over under for this week. What are we thinking? New York Giants is the matchup. RB4 in the depth chart. Do we care about that? I don't think so. And the Commanders traded away Brian Robinson. So now it's Chris Rodriguez, Austin Eckler, Jared McNichols, and Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. What do we think? 9.5 carries over under for the week against the Giants.
Man, that is a tough number. That is a really tough number. I think there's going to be more Austin Eckler here than anyone wants to acknowledge, right? Like I think it's going to be last year's Eckler role with a few enhancements. I'm not going to be at all surprised, of course, if Eckler is starting this game. Starting doesn't really matter in the NFL. It's not Major League Baseball. It's fine. You can come in and out. But that's a low number.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the over here by like a couple. I can imagine 11 carries, 1 catch, which will not be satisfying to the people who have actually
No,
started
right.
Krosky Merritt, to the people who were drafting him in roughly the same spot that they would have taken Brian Robinson had he been the lead back for Washington. I don't think that's going to satisfy everyone, but that feels right. I don't think that Austin Eckler is going to be 65% of the backfield touches or anything like that. I would guess that they want to keep him in effectively the same role that he had last year. So let's call it 12 touches, 11 carries for JCM.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to disagree with you here. I'm going to disagree, and I'm going to project that you might lose this one. So I'm going to go with the under here on Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, 9.5 carries. I agree with you that Austin Eckler is going to be a starter, but when you look at what the coaches have said, Chris Rodriguez is also going to be pretty involved in this backfield in the early downs, and that just put Merritt in a role where 10 carries is going to be a really hard feat. And I think, obviously, look, the Commanders should win this game against New York. But with Malik Neighbors, Russell Wilson will throw moonballs, and Tyron Tracy is a great threat out of the backfield as a receiver. I think they'll be able to at least somewhat keep up in this game. I think they'll be able to be within 7 to 10 points in this game. I don't think this is going to be a complete blowout for the New York Giants. And as a result, I just don't see a ton of garbage time rushes for this backfield in Washington. So I think Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt is going to go under 10 carries this week.
I think it's pretty clear that you're an Eagles fan who's just in denial about how good
No.
Washington is.
Washington
That's
is
what's happening here.
Washington's going to be very good this year. Washington's going to be very good this year, but I think the Giants are going to be able to keep up somewhat because Russell Wilson's not afraid to just chuck it downfield every play. We always, dude, I think like every preseason or every training camp highlight that we've seen from Russell Wilson is a moonball to Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious. Like every single one. It's amazing. It's going to be fun.
I'm here for it. I'm ready for it.
Oh yeah. So here for it. And the last one, this is one of my favorite players for fantasy football this year, Andy. I'm not sure how you're feeling about him, but Tucker Kraft, tight end for the Green Bay Packers, had a nice season last year, finished about the tight end 10 in PPR formats, low volume, but he led all players besides Marvin Mims in yards of the catch per reception among all NFL wide receivers or tight ends with 40 plus targets. He was a monster with the ball in his hands last year. But now we're projecting volume. So over under 3.5 receptions for Tucker Craft this week. It's a fun divisional matchup with Detroit. Huge game with a lot of implications. The Lions defense got really hurt in the second half last year, but they're looking pretty healthy heading into this year. Looks like a solid defense overall. And like I said, we saw Kraft step up big in year 2. He hit 4 receptions in plenty of games last year. What do we think about Kraft in week 1 against Detroit?
Yeah, this is another good number by you. I guess I would say that if it doesn't happen this week, I'd be a little bit concerned because we've got Jaden Reed dealing with a foot injury. Romeo Dobbs was injured for a lot of training camp. The table is kind of set for both Matthew Golden and Tucker Kraft. These are two of the healthiest and buzziest players in that receiving core. I think they should both see pretty decent volume. So I'm gonna actually take the over on Kraft. I don't think he's gonna go way over, but in a matchup that should be an absolute shootout in which I would expect Jordan Love to drop back 40 plus times. Yeah, I think Tucker Kraft can get 4 or 5 catches in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you here. I'm going to take the over. I like your analysis here on the shootout potential in this game because obviously we mentioned Detroit's defense looking healthy this year, but Green Bay's defense, on the other hand, they lost Jerry Alexander this offseason, a lot of young, unproven names in the cornerback room there. And then obviously they added Micah Parsons, but in that trade, they lost Kenny Clark. Micah Parsons might not play this week. And even if he does, it's a limited playbook that he's probably going to have. I don't think we're to see full 100% snap share for Parsons in the week. And if he does play that, he's probably going to make some mistakes. He doesn't know this playbook fully well yet. He's only been here for a handful of days. So this defense is not at full strength. I think that we're going to see Detroit score plenty of points. I really like Jameson Williams this week as a potential breakout on the outside with no Jerry Alexander. So I'm going to take Tucker Craft over 3.5 receptions. And like you said, with the injuries, Jaden Reed especially too, that foot injury, I think it's a plantar's injury. That's really not good. Like that's really bad. We've seen wide receivers have that kind of injury, and it completely derail their entire season.
Yep.
Like this is not an injury you want to play around with. So Reed is someone that I'm really starting to fade in fantasy football after this knowledge of this injury. So yeah, Tucker Craft, 4 receptions. I think he's going to get there. But that's going to be all for the over-unders. Andy Behrens, any last thoughts for the people as we head into week 1 of the fantasy football season?
Really just that I think I'm staying perfect here. I think this is another perfect over-under segment for me. That's gonna make me 6-0. That right there, I don't know. I should be eligible for various Hall of Fames if I manage to pull that off.
Yeah, I got to make a Hutch Come and Clutch Hall of Fame, and I mean you're the only person in it for now. You're the only person in it for now, but we'll hopefully get some other
Ring of
people in
Honor
this year. There we go, perfect. Throw out the deep shot real quick, man. Tell us about the deep shot. What's going on over you with Dalton? You and Dalton Del Don.
How about it? Thank you. The deep shot is just where all of our writing is going to live. It's where every fun thing that I was doing for Yahoo in the past, plus a few other goodies, all of that is going to live at the deep shot. I'm podcasting once a week with Chris Harris. You can find that on the Yacht Club podcast. It's a little bit of a subscription cost, but it's not much. It's $5 a month, and I think it's well worth it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning into the podcast. Thank you, Andy, for coming on the show. And obviously, good luck in your fantasy football matchups in week 1. May all the fantasy football odds ever be in your favor. We'll see you all next week on Tuesday with biggest reactions and questions from week 1 and also some waiver wire pickups. Best of luck in your fantasy football adventures this week.